So, Minister, we're discussing community safety, and I suppose instantly we think of Garda numbers, and look, it's well documented that our Garda numbers have declined while our population has increased. And I know and acknowledge that there are recruitment drives to try and increase the numbers, but we know that over 1,600 guards due to retire in the next 5 years. So efforts have to be made to ensure that they are replaced, that we address the issues that are making guards leave the force long before they reach retirement age, but also to build up the numbers and the capacity of the guards, because they're insufficient numbers, so therefore the guards are stretched too thinly. I mean, a friend of mine just remarked recently about seeing the squad car in our town, and like, they don't see the guards in the town. This is a large town, it's not just a village. And the guards are moving around from town to town just showing their faces. That's not sufficient. We need to make sure that there's a presence in every town and village. When I was growing up, now maybe it was because Cavan's a border town, I don't know, but there was at least one guard and usually 2 or 3 in every village, and a lot more in each of the towns as well. And all of the guards knew you, and they knew everybody, and you knew them, and that's what we need to get back to, community policing. But like many have spoken before me, it's not just about feet on the beat. It is about investing in our communities. And after the economic downturn, there were quite severe cuts to our community services, particularly our mental health services, our youth services and our addiction services, and that has had a detrimental effect on many of our communities. You know, I remember I taught in a Jesh school for many years, and I mean, it was easy to identify the families that needed support, because there's intergenerational poverty, there's intergenerational unemployment, there's addiction problems, and if there was investment in those families and those communities, you would actually it would pay dividends in the end, because you would prevent many of them ending up in our prisons. I remember, you know, talking to a second-year group, and they were about aged 13 or 14, and talking to them about, I was teaching them history, or trying to, and I was talking about some programme that was on the night before. And I said then, it would be too late, they would have gone to bed, they wouldn't have seen it. And one of the students said to me, well, what time was it on it? And I said, 10:30. And he says, oh no, he says, I was out running around the street at that time. And I said to him, and where were your parents that they weren't ensuring you were in bed? And he says, they were in the pub. That young man is now dead. He died of a drug overdose. And if people who, you know, former pupils are listening to me now, they won't know what student or former student I'm talking about, because there have been several who have lost their lives to accidental drug overdoses. And those are people who came from families where there was intergenerational poverty, where there was unemployment, where they needed support. And we need to invest in our communities. We need to invest in our deprived areas so that you can prevent crime. You're not going to prevent all crime, but certainly prevent a certain amount of it going forward. But, you know, I even engaging there recently with the National Youth Council of Ireland. They're saying, like, the funding that they get is so restrictive. They don't get multi-annual funding, so it's very hard for them to plan. There are some excellent projects, but they're limited in what they can do because they can't expand their services. There's no funding for staff. We need to address that and ensure that that is discontinued, that we see substantial funding put into all of our community services, our youth, and as I said, our addiction services and our mental health services. Some people here have called for an increase in the number of prison places. I mean, I remember engaging with the prison service when I was on the Disability Committee in the last term, and there are huge numbers of people in our prison services who should not be there. And it's not because I'm saying they're wrongfully convicted or anything, they're there because they committed a crime, but there are people with mental health issues. There are people who are autistic, and the reason in many cases that they committed a crime and ended up in prison is because they did not get the community supports that they required. And had they done so, it's quite possible they would have went on to live a different life. So we need to ensure that the community supports and services are put there in our communities to support people with mental health issues, people with addiction issues, and particularly our youth. Gormain Lachlan.